I'm going to talk about the role of right atrial pressure in maintaining a steady state condition where the cardiac output is balanced by the venous return of the heart. And the relationship depicted on this graph essentially says that the rate at which blood is leaving the heart has to be balanced by the rate at which it's returning under steady state conditions. So the right atrial pressure plays a keystone role in this, in that just focusing on the cardiac output curve here in red, as right atrial pressure increases, the cardiac output increases. And this is because as right atrial pressure increases, you'll get greater filling of the ventricle, more blood moving from the right atria ultimately into the left ventricle, promoting a increase in preload, increase in contractility, promoting an increase in stroke volume, thereby increasing cardiac output. Conversely, right atrial pressure is inversely proportional to the venous return, because the venous return, the rate at which blood is flowing into the heart, is based on the difference between the central venous pressure and the right atrial pressure. Central venous pressure must be higher than the right atrial pressure for blood to flow down its pressure gradient into the right atrium. So as you increase right atrial pressure, this opposes the flow of blood into the right atrium, thereby decreasing venous return. Under steady state conditions, the right atrial pressure must be at a value that will precisely match the rate at which blood is leaving the heart, which is the cardiac output, and the rate at which the blood is returning, which is the venous return. In previous lectures, we've looked at how cardiac output can be altered, in some cases increased, by the autonomic nervous system, such as the case as the response to a decrease in blood pressure due to postural changes. Decrease in blood pressure promotes an increase in sympathetic outflow, which increases heart rate and increases stroke volume, and this will result in an increase in cardiac output. Increase in heart rate and or stroke volume due to the effects of sympathetic activation will result in an increased cardiac output for a given right atrial pressure. This is represented here with a solid curve. Solid curve is the relationship between the right atrial pressure and cardiac output. The upward and leftward shift is based on the effects of increasing contractility, thereby ejecting more blood during systole, promoting a decrease in the end systolic volume, or due to increasing heart rate. The effects of right atrial pressure promote increased filling of the heart and an increase in the end diastolic volume. The effects on right atrial pressure are additive to the effects of increasing the heart rate and increasing the contractility, which explains why the curve shifts. The key to interpreting this plot is understanding that changes in cardiac output cannot occur in a vacuum, that corresponding changes to right atrial pressure need to be made to reestablish a steady state condition where the cardiac output and the venous return match. To illustrate this, let's consider a situation where sympathetic outflow increases, increasing cardiac output of the heart. This causes an upward shift of the cardiac output right atrial pressure relationship, and at the instant that this occurs, the cardiac output jumps from the steady state condition of 5 liters per minute to a higher output condition of 8 liters per minute. At the instant that this occurs, because there will be no change in right atrial pressure, right at the instant it occurs, the venous return remains 5 liters per minute. This means that under these conditions, the rate at which blood is leaving the heart is greater than the rate at which it's returning. And obviously this cannot be maintained very long. And the first effect of having a greater cardiac output than venous return is there is a net emptying of the heart of blood. The loss of blood from the heart results in a decrease in the right atrial pressure. The decrease in the right atrial pressure is going to promote 2 effects. The first effect is that this will decrease the preload of the heart during diastole, therefore reducing the stroke volume of the heart during systole. This will start bringing the cardiac output down from its high value of around 8 liters per minute. At the same time, because the right atrial pressure is decreasing, the filling pressure of the heart is increasing, because again, the filling pressure is the difference between the central venous pressure and the right atrial pressure. As the right atrial pressure falls, the filling pressure increases, resulting in an increase in the venous return. And over the course of a few beats, where cardiac output steadily drops, venous return steadily increases, we will once again approach a new steady state condition where the rate at which blood is returning to the heart, as the venous return, matches the rate at which the blood is leaving the heart, which is the cardiac output. And this new equilibrium point, based on the increase in contractility or heart rate, occurs at a lower right atrial pressure than our initial steady state condition.